So welcome back again to Avram. I was going to speak about the Shem MiShmuel, but as I said, I found some stuff just today in Rav Hirsch and in a shir from Rav Moshe Shapiro that I got very excited about. So we're going to mention briefly the Shem MiShmuel, and we're going to move on to that. The Shem MiShmuel was about, Yosef's famous refusal to Eshes Potiphar. And for people who like to follow the trop, right, the notes in the Torah reading, so the word where he says Vayemain, he refused, has a shalshelis. This very rare one, Vayemain. So the Shem MiShmuel says that comes to separate that one word from what comes afterwards, where he explains to her his reasoning. Vayomer Eshes Adonov, he says, listen, your husband trusted me, he put me in charge of everything, how could I do such a thing, etc. So he says this teaches us a template of what to do when you're torn about doing something wrong. So the first thing is, don't get into the arguments and the philosophy and all these things. Just say, I know this isn't for me, I refuse. Then afterwards, you can discuss the things with the other party. He said, because again, Eshes Potiphar wasn't a simple woman, and it says in the Midrashim, she was showing him in astrology that he was supposed to have a child through her, right? Which really happened through her daughter, right? That Yosef married. Yeah, correct. That's so it was supposed to come out. So it wasn't a simple argument. He didn't want to argue. He says, first of all, I know this is not for me. I'm not arguing. Then you can deal with it. The Chasam Sofer, interestingly, said a thing. Chasam Sofer said it's very good to investigate, things in Judaism, but do it after you've already decided, I'm going to continue keeping the Torah as it was kept. Now investigate to your heart's content. It's great. You'll see, you'll be able to see things more objectively. But if you're coming at it as a judge, well, let me look into this and see if I want to do it or not. That's when you're going to get all twisted. So you see, attach that to Hanukkah as well. He says the Yevonim were philosophers. And depending on which group of the Greek philosophers, they had their Epicureans and they had the Spartans and they had different ones. So some of them even, they didn't want to get into physical pleasures, right? They were just keeping away from that. But he says it was all based on philosophy, and therefore when push came to shove, they would do what they wanted. There's a famous story, they say Aristotle was once found doing something disgusting, and they asked him, how can you do that? You yourself teach Aristotle that this is something disgusting. He says, right now I'm not Aristotle. I took a break from being Aristotle, so I could do this. Right? If there was a famous professor who was accused of some immoral behavior, and he taught ethics in university. So people said, this is a big problem. He says, why? Do I have to be a triangle to teach geometry? Right? You know the material, I teach it. Torah is not like that. He says, Torah comes from that strength of knowing our identity and who it is and what it's for. Okay, now this took me to Rav Hirsch, and it's always something to do. If you have a few minutes in a shul, and you're thinking about something in the Parsha or some other topic, pull Sfarim off the shelf, see who speaks about it, what's there. Rav Hirsch, speaking about Yosef's refusal, had such a fascinating piece. Right? I saw the Hebrew translation, the shul here has the English translation, where Yosef told her, he says, if I do this, how can I do this great evil? And I will sin against Hashem. So Rav Hirsch says it means, aside from being wrong against your husband, who treated me so well, it also, like every immoral act, will be a sin against Hashem. Now Rav Hirsch takes us on an explanation of this word chet. Okay, he was a master of Lashon HaKodesh, and he would work on getting the things. He says the translation of chet as sin is often not accurate. He gave the word in German Sünde or something. He says, which means this wrongdoing that has to be atoned for. He says, in reality, right, he says, chet is something else. He connects chet, and he says, I'm being like a little daring in this connection. Chet, which is ches tes aleph, to the word, the root chata, which is ches tov hey. Ches tov hey means, there's a Hebrew verb, lachtot. There's an object called a machta. What that means is to rake coals. Okay, to rake coals out of the fire. A machta is what they call a fire pan, like the Kohen Gadol would use on Yom Kippur, where you would separate some coals from the fire and put them in the fire pan. So if Hirsch wants to say that the word chet for a wrongdoing is similar to chata, chet tafeh, this idea of separating coals from the fire. And he explains. He says that if you take something out of its elements, okay, if you take it out of that which gives it its life, its vitality, its continuation, he says, then it's going to dwindle. If you take burning pieces of wood from the fire, they're going to go out. He says the chet, the sin, is where we remove part of ourselves, part of our personality, part of it from being in the fire, which is this fire of Torah, which is eternal, and that is supposed to infuse all of us. And then when it's separated off, so it's like you were choteh, you took those coals out of the fire and they're simply going to dwindle. Okay, so this is, he says, you have to realize that Avodas Hashem is so many ways referred to as fire. Hashem's revealing himself to us. It says Hashem is Eshochla, a devouring fire. Right? The Torah is called Eshdos, a fiery law, so to speak. The Zohar Kodesh describes the Torah as it's written in its original in heaven as being written Esh Chara al Gabe Esh Lavona, black fire on white fire. So this idea of fire is that when something goes into fire, it becomes part and parcel of the fire. The fire engulfs it, the fire unleashes its energy, and while it's in there, it continues to burn. So he says, if something is separated from it, so then that'll be it. Yosef was saying, he was bemoaning the fact that what's going to happen here is I'm going to be detached from that life force. I'm going to be separated from it. And that could also fit in with the Chazal that says that Yaakov Avinu appeared to Yosef and he said, if you listen to her, you have to realize your name was going to be written on the stones of the Choshen with your brothers. And if you do this, you're not going to be on there. Chet, it's also used in Tanakh to miss a target. Lachtia matara. You missed something. It's not the idea so much of chet that, I did something I shouldn't have done. The word chet focuses more on what you're missing. You yourself missed an opportunity. That can be in the incident itself, but the result is that you have now separated yourself from that fire, from that life force. So this ties in very much to Hanukkah. Okay, and here I saw such a chiddush in the Shorim of Rav Moshe Shapira. The Gemara in Yuma says that for 40 years Shimon HaTzadik was the Kohen Gadol. During that time, many miraculous things happened. Right, the red wool that was on the horns of the Tzadar Azazel were turned white, and other things. But among them was that the Ner Ma'aravi, the westernmost candle in the menorah, okay, which there's a couple opinions as to which one that is, never went out. Okay, now we have to realize that the command in the Torah about lighting the menorah, it tells us, Lahalos ner tamid, right, that we're supposed to be lighting, and what ner tamid they always call the eternal light, meaning it's always supposed to be going. Michutz laparoches ha'edus, bo'el moed, we'll get to that location in a second, it's lit outside the paroches ha'edus, which is the curtain which separates off the Kodesh Kadoshim, where the Aron Kodesh is. And it says, Yarochos Aaron me'erev ad boker lifnei Hashem. Okay, so it's supposed to be from evening till morning. But Chazal tell us that the Ner Ma'aravi, this westernmost candle, would always put in the same amount of oil as the other ones. And no matter how long the night, even in what's called Leilei Tevas HaArukim, that candle would always burn beyond. It would keep burning. Okay, the Ramban says if it did go out, the Kohen had to relight it. But otherwise it would keep burning miraculously. So this, so that's more like a yahrzeit candle kind of, but it represents that concept that we have an idea of a ner tamid, right? That's why shuls have it. So this was a miracle, and we have to realize that this miracle took place constantly in the Beis HaMikdash, right? This means even in Vayeishev, through the times of Shimon HaTzadik. Okay, so this was something which was there. We get very excited about Hanukkah and that the oil burned for 8 days, but there was something miraculous going on all the time. Even though all the miracles that were in the first Beis HaMikdash did not reappear in the second, but this one was there. Okay, so this, and Chazal say this Ner Ma'aravi, this one candle that burnt, was Eidusi La'olam She'ashchina Shar B'Yisrael. This was this testimony to the world that the Shekhinah dwells among Am Yisrael. Okay, now, in terms of the location, in the Pasuk it says that Aaron lights the menorah, and particularly this Ner Ma'aravi, Michutz LaParoches HaEdus, outside the Paroches that witnesses, or that testifies, so to speak. Now, in other places, the Torah talks about Michutz LaParoches, it doesn't say Paroches HaEdus. Why here with lighting the menorah? And the menorah really had nothing to do with the paroches. Why are we connecting it to it? So he explains like this. The Aron itself, the Aron HaKodesh, he said, Rishonim already say the word Aron is related to the idea of or, of light. The Aron is a source of light. But the Aron is behind the paroches. The Aron is behind the curtain. Okay, it's there. Now, certainly when Hashem gave the luchos to Am Yisrael, when there was Matan Torah, that was a declaration, a testimony to the world that the Shekhinah is with Am Yisrael. But how do we know that that goes on? How do we know that that continues? You can't see the light of the Aron. The answer to that is the Ner Ma'aravi. The Ner Ma'aravi, michutz paroches ha'edus, because it's expressing something about that Torah which is in the Aron Kodesh. Meaning it wasn't given to us one time and it happens to be there. There's a living connection between that and Am Yisrael. Now there's another connection that existed in that way. At Matan Torah, Am Yisrael came to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, please, we can't hear Hashem speak to us anymore, we're going to die, you speak to us. And Hashem answered to that, Heitivo asher diberu. They said good, right? Moshe Rabbeinu was a bit upset. He said, no, they're saying good. And I'm going to respond to it by Navi Akim Navi Kamocha. I'm going to establish prophets among them, like you. Meaning that voice of Matan Torah is going to continue just in the form of what's called Nevuah, in the form of prophecy. So every Navi that speaks is really continuing on this process of Matan Torah. And that is also this idea of this testimony that Hashem is still with Am Yisrael and still speaking to us through His Nevi'im. Okay? Now, the menorah is also connected to Nevuah. This we find from Shmuel. Okay? The first Navi that when we say in Pirkei Avos was the Zakenim L'Nevi'im, the Zakenim passed over the Masorah of the Torah to the leaders who were called Nevi'im. The first of those Nevi'im was Shmuel. Okay, it doesn't mean Yoshua was a Navi also, but the period of Nevi'im, this transfer to Nevi'im, this first one was Shmuel. And the Navi describes for us in great detail the very interesting first Nevuah Shmuel had. Right, his mother brought him up to help Eli in the Beis HaMikdash, right? And it says like this. It says he was sleeping right there in the Mishkan, and it sets the scene. It says in the Navi, "V'ner Elokim terem nichba." Ner Elokim terem yichaveh. Shmuel was sleeping there, and the ner of Hashem hadn't gone out yet. U'Shmuel shochev beheichal Hashem, and Shmuel shochev in heichal Hashem. So meaning that ner ma'aravi was still burning. singular ner, terem yichaveh, it hadn't yet gone out. Shmuel is there in the Heichal, and there he receives nevuah. Okay, this is the light of the menorah in that location, michutz leparoches ha'edus, coming to him. So he says, we have these two parallels, the nevuah and the ner ma'aravi. Both of those came to an end at the time of Shimon HaTzadik. Shimon HaTzadik was Mishyore Knesset HaGedolah, from the last of that group called Knesset HaGedolah, Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, that included Nevi'im in the original makeup of them. Right? Those were the ones who made our Shemon Esrei. Right? But Shimon HaTzadik was at the end. After Shimon HaTzadik, there was no more Nevuah, and there was no more Ner Ma'aravi. Yeah. The last ones, Chagai Zechariah and Malachi. They were after Chagai Zechariah and Malachi?
There was no way for 40 year span. Shmuel was the first one, but Zechariah and they left in.
After Shmuel, yes. After Shmuel, certainly. Right, even for the beginning of Bayit Sheni.
He said the war stopped there after Shimon HaTzadik.
Shimon HaTzadik was in Bayit Sheni already. Long after, in other words, from Bovel, they came back. He had a few Nevi'im, and then first, Shimon HaTzadik, and then was Yochanan Kohen Gadol, was a story in and of himself, and then was Matisyo. Right, that was, but for that period, after Shimon HaTzadik, so the Ner Ma'aravi didn't appear. Right, now this was a great crisis, meaning it's a time, it's in fact, Rav Moshe says, it's a very fascinating thing. He says, Yochanan Kohen Gadol, who's the example, where it says in Pirkei Avos, Al tamin ba'atzmecha ad yom moscha, don't believe in yourself until the day you die. For we see that Yochanan Kohen Gadol was Meshamish lifnai v'lifnim. He went into the Kodesh Kadoshim on Yom Kippur for, I think, 40 years. It said, and in the end, he became a tzedukah. In the end, right, and the tzedukkim were part of the whole assimilation into Greek and Greek culture. He did that. Rav Moshe says he put up a hard battle, but he said there was no nevuah, there was no ner ma'aravi. And the Greek pressure of their culture and their outlook was so strong that he almost said, it was almost like an onus. Like, what could he do? We were in that darkness. It was a very tragic event in a tragic time. And then we come to Hanukkah. Now, this itself is an eye-opener that's worth coming just for this. The basic halacha of Ner Hanukkah is Ner Ish Ubeisa. All you have to light is one candle for the whole household. Yeah, for 8 days. One candle. That's all you need.
Every day, one candle.
Every day, just one candle. And you fulfill the basic halacha.
One candle every day.
Oh, so now, correct, but one candle. We, do what's called the Mahadrin, Mina Mahadrin, and going from 1 on the first night up to 8. Right, the Ashkenazim do, every male member, at least in the household, lights their own 8, etc. But women are also chayiv. You do. But the basic halacha is 1. Now he says, the menorah that the Chashmonoim lit with that pach of shemen had 7 candles. Okay, now why didn't the Chachamim make a takana that we light 7 candles? That's what they lit. That's what was burning all the days of Hanukkah, were 7 candles. Why make 1 candle? He says, because the takana of Hanukkah was zecher l'ner ma'aravi. Hanukkah was about, the menorah that they lit was a sign that the message of the ner ma'aravi was back. The Shechina shara b'Yisrael. That the Shechina is with Am Yisrael.
Return at that point?
Or that it was always there, just we couldn't see it. But yeah, this was the return of it being visible, of the light of the Aron coming outside, and outside in a very big way, because the Ner Chanukah goes beyond the Beis HaMikdash. The Ner Chanukah goes everywhere. Like we said, the Ran has his famous explanation, Haneres Halelu Kodeshem, that the Chachamim imbued the Ner Chanukah with the Kedusha of something like from the Beis HaMikdash, of Hekdesh. That's why Ein Lanu Reshus Lishtamish B'hem. We can't use them for anything. These are things of Kodesh. The only place we find such things are the Beis HaMikdash. But here, it travels with us everywhere. And the light of that Ner Hanukkah goes everywhere. So what happened was that it's true. This is what's asked. The Ramban asks on the famous Medrash. In the beginning of Parshas Ba'aloscha, it talks about Aaron HaKohen going to light the Neros in the Mishkan. He says, why is that right after the end of Parshas Naso? Because Parshas Naso talked about the Nesim, the princes of each Shevet who brought a korban each day in the dedication of the Mishkan, aside from Shevet Levi. Aaron was upset, he was worried. Could it be that our Shevet was rejected? Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Aaron, don't worry, Shalcha Gedolah Mishelahem. Yours is greater than them, right? Because you are Madlikum Meiti V'Saneros, and that goes on forever. So the Ramban asked, okay, 1 second. First of all, there are a ton of things that Aaron did that the Nesim Shvatim didn't do. He was the Kohen Gadol. There were many things he did. Why focus on the Neros? And what does that mean? That the Neros go on forever, and their Korbanos were for a set time. The menorah in the Mishkan, in the Mikdash, was there as long as it was there. Okay, destroy the Beis HaMikdash, it's over. Says the Ramban, this is referring to the lighting of Aaron's descendant, the Chashmonoim. And that goes on forever. So what we see from there is that it's not a new phenomenon and it's not nostalgia. It's a continuation of that same Ner that was there. Not just of the lighting that was there then, but the lighting of Hanukkah brought back that message of the Ner Ma'arovi, Sha'ashchina Shora B'Yisrael. Chazal say Ner mitzvah, a mitzvah is like a candle. The Torah or, and Torah is light. A mitzvah is dependent on conditions, and we need to have the materials to do it. It depends on how well I do it, sometimes technically even, for it to have its full effect. But Torah is light itself, light unbounded, light which doesn't have an end, no particular time, it's light. The trick is that through our mitzvahs, we're able to create Torah or. We're able to create that light. So the mitzvah of Hanukkah shows us that what we do with finite things, you're saying, listen, I light my Ner Hanukkah, it doesn't last forever, right? It goes, depends how much oil I put in there. It's true, I put it in a big cup. It might burn till the morning, but not miraculously. So where's that message? That's the power of the mitzvah. By making it a mitzvah, it was able to encapsulate the or, that light of the Ner Ma'arovi, that light of testimony that says that what's in the Aron, that Torah which is there, was not just a one-time gift to Am Yisrael. And again, we have to remember, the Greeks translated the Torah. And Chazal said this was a fulfillment of one of the curses in the Torah. Says, Asidim umos ha'olam letargem es haTorah v'lomar anu Yisrael. The nations of the world are someday going to translate the Torah and say, we're the Jews. Meaning, right, you people say you're the people of the book. Okay, we translate the book into the Greek. Now we got the book, right? What's the deal? We put it on the shelf next to Hammurabi's Code and next to, Homer and whoever else we have up there in Aristotle. And we say to her, welcome to the library, right? It's no big thing. The idea is, right, that with that, so to speak, book, with the Torah came the Shekhinah being among Am Yisrael. And that is something which is constantly there, but Hanukkah enables us to bring it out. Hanukkah enables us to bring it out everywhere, in every dark place, above and beyond what the Ner Ma'arovi could do. And it's such a key. It's so important for us to have, to realize and recognize that that's what we're commemorating, and that's what we're doing, a living connection, not something past, not something tradition, right? I mentioned, I have this pet peeve with the movie or play Fiddler on the Roof. Right, that says for some reason became a key part of the Jewish religion, right, since it came out in the 1960s or something. At this moment, somebody is singing Sunrise, Sunset, someplace in the world or something. And it starts off with something very insidious, right? Tevye comes out to do his little monologue and he says, why do we wear these little hats on our heads? We don't know, it's tradition. Why do we have these strings on our clothes? We don't know, it's tradition. And he sings a song, Tradition. It's basically saying, Yeah, whatever. Every country, every culture has weird things that they picked up along the way. Read National Geographic. Different places around the time. So we have these things, but okay, if you like them, if it helps bring you some nice warm feelings, keep them up.
I said, maybe you should choose somebody else.
That's right.
Chosen people, maybe.
Maybe choose someone else, correct. As opposed to the Shechina Shruah B'Yisrael. So we don't deal in traditions, we don't deal in nostalgia, we don't deal in symbolism, we deal in reality. Hanukkah is very real, the Ner is very real, and that's what we take along with us. So when Yosef said he didn't want to be separated, that's the idea. There's a fire that is among Am Yisrael that Moshe Rabbeinu saw at the Sneh. Hasneh bor ba'esh v'hasneh einenu ukal. There's a fire inside of us that doesn't consume us. It's a fire that brings us to life, that enables us, and if we are able to connect to it and express it, then we even have that testimony to the entire world. So that's the fire that we're connecting to on Hanukkah, and that's the light that comes out there, the light of the Ner Maravi, the light of Nevuah, which we don't have, but like Chazal said, Am Yisrael lo neviim heim, b'nei neviim heim. We're built in, we have the Nevuah gene inside of us. We're just not able to get it. All of that is there, but all of that comes out more than any other time in the year in the Ner Hanukkah. That's partly why these Parshas come out at the same time.